You called forth something powerful this time. I'm intrigued. It appears that you're at a juncture where things are actually landing in your reality, meaning the things that you have been envisioning calling forward are at the very least knocking on your door, ready to land. Now's the time. And so, in today's conversation or exploration, I have 3 key words to share with you that I imagine will assist you in effectively bridging this sense of yes now with actualizing what you want most now into reality. I'm Danielle Lynn, and I imagine some way, somehow, we've talked before. And in today's conversation, these 3 words have been one of my most powerful bridges into bringing forward my visions from imagination into actualization in this world. Because most of us who are, let's say, stepping into their zone of genius, which from my perspective, I see you are, I see you embodying your genius more and more so each day. As we're stepping into our zone of genius, we also often have opportunities to, let's say, meet our resistances, meet our old patterns, meet the things that have previously maybe inspired us to keep a lid on our genius. And so when we're shedding that skin, when we're shedding off the old paradigms of our life, of our world, of our rhythm, we sometimes find ourselves at seeming resistance points. And it can be hilariously infuriating because we know on some level, like, yes, this is a time to go through, while simultaneously just be like standing there, kind of looking at the wall going, Here's the wonderful thing. You found this video. I'm imagining that in part, this has been your permission slip to shift beyond the wall, my very magical friend. So well done. Finger snaps for you. I love it. And so these 3 words are 3 of my most magical words, once again, to shift beyond resistances and step right into your most empowered step now. You ready? To share these words with you, I'm going to invite you to have an embodied experience with me. And what I mean by embodied experience is, let's make it relevant for you in this moment. Because I can tell you about how this works, or we can just experience it together in real time. So if I have your A-OK to do this, I invite you to continue watching the video. And if not, well, thanks for checking in. So I'm going to invite you to imagine, if you will, whatever it is that right now you would like to shift. So we could say it's a resistance. It could be, let's say, a challenge that you're experiencing right now. Or maybe it's something you've been chewing on for a while that you haven't quite figured out your way through just yet. All right. First thing first, no shame, no blame. Hey, we're all exploring things at any given time. Sometimes it gets sticky out here in reality. We roll with it. All right. So I'm going to invite you to take some breaths through the nose. And what we're going to do is, by taking the breath in through the nose, we're allowing ourselves to be super present in the moment. Okay. So as you breathe in through the nose and you breathe out through the mouth, you can just notice how the air passes in and out to your body. Once again, breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth. And we're just noticing at the same time the thing that has, let's say, had a bit of challenge to it before. And we're just noticing it as an observer, very objectively. Neither resisting it, nor trying to fix it, nor loving it, just observing. So as you breathe in and out, I invite you to invoke the following contemplation. I am curious. I am curious about the most harmonious path between me and this situation, person, thing, or experience that I am imagining right here, right now. I am curious about what inspirations, ideas, or possibilities might emerge. I'm curious about how I might simply be present with this thing without forcing it to move or change one way or another, and what now steps might emerge for me in each new moment. I'm curious about how this gets to turn out in the most ideal way as I decide to let go of my expectation of how it must be. I'm actually very curious about how it can turn out when I'm a little bit more, let's say, light with the way that it ends up being. I love that I get to trust myself more and more so each day that it's going to turn out ideally. I love that this curiosity connects me with possibilities that I didn't even know. And now I realize that whether or not I have an answer right now, because I'm connected with curiosity, I can feel more space in my mind's eye, in my heart, and in my gut, and around the situation and me itself. And I can see there is more and more possibility and probability for a natural solution to arise in each and every moment. How cool. And so be it. So I invite you to breathe in and out. And in this breath in and out, we're simply inviting ourselves to really immerse in that state of curiosity and contemplation. We are being actively light with the moment and with the situation. We're neither demanding an answer must emerge, but we're also opening up our mind, our creativity, and our inspiration to possible opportunities, ideas, and probabilities that maybe before that moment we weren't attuned to or weren't available to us, because before the previous moment, perhaps our scope was narrowed into what we had known. Curiosity, and what you just invoked, represents one of the bridges into the unknown. But it's a deliberate bridge, not simply a, let's say, random, well, I don't know. It's a bridge that allows for an unknown with a, let's say with a specific. It's a bridge that allows for an unknown with a specific. So in a very interesting way, you're simultaneously allowing yourself to release a tight grasp on expectation while lining yourself up for the best possible outcome to connect with you. And you could see this as flow state solution orienting. When you have an inner inspiration, it simply is an invitation for you to breathe it into life. It's not about needing it to be perfect or knowing that it will work out the gate. But I have found that when we are, let's say, afraid of failure or afraid of the unknown, it's simply an invitation for us to launch something imperfectly, so to speak. If you want to write a book and you don't know where to start, just start writing something. Some people say, oh, well, I'll sign up for a course in this. Well, do what feels inspired for you. And I invite you to consider that sometimes simply writing, simply putting something out there is the first step to materializing and actualizing something. And it may or may not take off, but it may also set in motion the momentum for, well, I did the first round of this, and now, even though there's still a lot I don't know, there's more that I know that I don't know. And so now I can refine this step. So now I can develop this skill, because now through doing this through one cycle, I understand that perhaps it would be good to refine this, whereas before I didn't even know about this. And so oftentimes it's through a threading of feeling the inspiration, getting curious, and taking a step that we begin the process of weaving into reality. Now, a note here is that we're not saying things must come from action, but I am offering that when you have received enough inspiration and you're feeling a certain urge, that perhaps the expression through action is an invitation to not only allow what you have received to breathe, but it opens up more space for more inspiration and new insight to come through. I have found that with consistent practice, with consistent application, it does a few things. For one, and we're going to set this down just a moment. All right. For one, I find that because my standard approach is now curiosity, my nervous system doesn't immediately go into overdrive when something outside of me happens. Instead, my nervous system immediately engages in curiosity, flow, present moment mode, which I find not only more empowering, but since it doesn't trigger, let's say, a cortisol release in my brain, then my body chemistry tends to be a lot more present, a lot more balanced. I don't have high stress levels. So we're not just approaching something mentally. There is a physiological element to retraining your patterns on how you approach present moment challenges. Now, this could even be applied to anything that would appear to be an immediate stress situation, because even in an immediate stress situation, being able to be clear, actioned, and taking present moment steps, because it's not about just sitting and thinking in your mind, it's about, okay, presence, breathe in, now what? And allowing yourself to move with clarity will often produce much more helpful results than, say, driving yourself into a panic. So now I want to invite you to check in. How do you currently feel about your curiosity and this situation you're exploring? Literally, how does it feel in your body, in your mind, in your heart, to be in a place of curiosity with this situation? For myself, I often find not only a sense of relief and release, I generally feel a bit more clear-minded and clear presence. Now, here's the next step, because curiosity is part of the engagement, right? The next step I find is I generally will ask myself in the moment, are there any now steps for me to take? So for example, sometimes the mind wants to plan or logic or think. So sometimes what I'll do is I might say, all right, I will give my mind, my psyche, my space about 10 minutes of time to write out a plan or to write out a list or document it down. And then I do that, and then I set it aside until it's time to do something with it. Because now I'm no longer just playing it out in my head. If I do think there is a logic step to take, I will take it, but then it is complete in that moment. And then now what? Then perhaps the now what is, now it's time to focus on something else, because that will allow the space for new inspiration to arise. And so this is where you could say emotional intelligence and inner grounding plays a role, because it is the trust in yourself and in your inner mechanism to actually provide you the solution when you let go of grasping onto it, that allows for you to work in rhythm with your subconscious mind, with, let's say, your expanded conscious self, to actually deliver the solutions to you in perfect timing. And not just deliver them to you, but in ways that could be beyond your expectation. And this could be what some people might describe as miracles, but let's say for you and me, get to be more and more, this is just the way we roll. We just be magic. It just happens like that. But it's not because necessarily we are enforcing our will this way on the universe, but because we are so in alignment with ourselves and with what's possible that we have attuned ourselves and placed ourselves in positioning for receiving what is the most congruent step. Information, situation, someone calls you, someone runs into you, a thought pops into your mind, a phone number pops into your mind. I'll reach out to this person, this book shows up, this video shows up. I'm listing off synchronicities and how it can happen. And it can happen so many more ways than that. But it's not just, let's say, some random magic. It is what I describe as the self-organizing principle of this universe and reality. In a lot of ways, I've personally experienced it very almost mathematically. It's almost very mathematical. What I do imagine is that because each of us is, let's say, perhaps inspired to live in our most energy effective ways, that if things like this appear to work effectively in our lives, we may apply them more and more so each day. And as we continue to apply them and actually see the symptoms play out in our life as a really aligned, flow-based life in which things appear to happen for you, well then, perhaps there's something to it. Now here's the next key. Curiosity doesn't presume outcome. In a sense, curiosity can be seen as a bridge of expanding your possibility of what outcomes there can be, because perhaps the outcome you've been focused on, it may or may not be the outcome that is, let's say, the solution. Now, if it's something, let's say, close to the heart, close to the spirit, people sometimes hear that and they think, oh, that means I'm letting go of a dream. But I'll often share to people, much of the time, at our core, what we want is, let's say, our version of peace, love, happiness, fulfillment, enjoyment, satisfaction, achievement, all these things. And then we have our, let's say, definitions or stories of how that plays out. And then in between all that, we may have our stories of attachment to how things must turn out, or they feel unresolved, this and this. And pain and suffering often comes not from the core of what we want, but from the attachment to the story of how it must play out. And the idea that we must attempt to exert our will upon external reality to play out a very specific way in order for us to, let's say, have a very certain experience. And so, my friend, I imagine for you, and I imagine for all of us in this moment, I am curious may be the current phrase that you might play with and explore when it comes to whatever is on your plate right now. But again, not simply as a series of words, but as a way of genuinely meeting the experience from a very open-hearted yet grounded within sense of curiosity, from a place that's rooted in, well, whether or not I know exactly how it will turn out, I'm curious about all the possible coherent ways that it may turn out, and all the ways that I will observe and take inspired action that are relevant for me in the moment, that meet me, that make sense to me, that align for me, and that I will then take the next step on, and the next, and the next. You are very super cool from my perspective. And I'm very inspired by the way that you have continued to apply things like this, the other things that you've been learning, in ways that have been relevant for you. Because from my perspective, just the way that I am, let's say, sensing this moment and sensing our conversation, it really appears that you have put in the work. and you are beginning to reap the benefits of it more and more so. Sometimes it might appear, right, when a rocket first boots off, it might appear to take a lot of energy to just get off that initial ground. And yet there's a certain point where momentum really kicks in. And from my perspective, I am seeing you at that point of momentum kicking in more and more so. And I invite you to receive heart about where you're at in the moment and really allow yourself the celebration of all you have distilled thus far, of all you have come together with, brought together with in your life. More finger snaps.